Hello everyone, this is Ben Flynn. I am the CEO of Zeleo, and I wanted to take a moment to quickly show how to use Zeleo with your QuickBooks account. So I'm going to go through the brief setup and then go and show you how to use it in action. So the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, is to sign in. Now you can create a free account of your own by going to www.zeleo.io and signing in. So here we go. I'm going to sign in as me. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually go up to this top window here and select Manage Team. Now in this dialog, which you only get if you're a team administrator, you can manage your team members, which is probably a topic for a different video, but you can actually reference people by how they relate. And define how they relate on the Relationships tab. But what we care about this time is the Applications tab. So you'll see that there are a bunch of applications I've added to my environment and my team. So I'm going to go down here and see I found QuickBooks Updates right here. I'm just going to hit the plus right next to it. So what this is going to do is remove it from the available applications and add it to my team. And once that's added, the events that come from your QuickBooks account will be exposed to the rule builder, which I'll show you in a second. There are a couple steps we need first to actually go through and make this work. The first of which is to go to sign in. So if you go and hit this settings button next to QuickBooks, there'll be a sign in button. And when you click this, a new tab is going to open and ask you to log into your QuickBooks account. So what this is doing is basically giving Zeleo permission to access your account objects. So I'm going to hit sign in, and it's going to authorize me. And there we go. So if you see Zeleo refresh, that means everything happened without a problem. So it's going to take you back, and it's going to give you a new tab and refresh and show your desktop again here in Zeleo. So the next thing we need to do is to find our account ID. So I'm going to just sign in regularly to my QuickBooks account. And what I'm going to do here is up in the settings panel, you should be able to see your account and company settings. And if you go to billing and subscription, you'll see company ID. So this is what we want. So you want to copy this number and then go into Zeleo again, go to your edit profile. This is just your user profile. And when you go to applications, if you scroll down, you will see QuickBooks has been added here, and you need to add in a company ID. So paste that number in here. And very important, remove the spaces, because when it comes from QuickBooks in an event, it actually does not have spaces in it, despite that it shows up in the UI that way. So hit the checkbox to save it. And now you're actually set up to go. So you should be able to go to your QuickBooks account on Apps and go to My Apps, and you should see Zeleo there. So this means that we are listening to your events and you can react to them with Zeleo. So what can you do with this? So on the side panel, if you open this up, you'll see a few options. There are two that we're going to pay attention to today. One is rules and conditions. So this is where you actually configure the logic of how to react to your various events from your QuickBooks account. And then communication templates. This allows you to define a output template. So an email body, a Slack post, anything that has a blob of text, you're going to use the communication templates to do. So we're actually going to start with that. So select communication templates, and you'll see I already have a few made. You probably are not going to, but when you create, I'm going to open one that I've already created, a new template, the first thing you're going to select is email. So this is going to go away shortly. Initially, we had this built in. Communication templates were specifically used for email and SMS. And in the template itself, it shows which one it was going to, and then in the consequence, you can set which, just to say, send communication, and the template would take care of it. It's a little counterintuitive, so we're actually going to switch that so there are two events, one send email, one SMS, and just make this a generic template. But for now, it's this way. So just select email. If it's email, it means it'll be used for everything. And then give the message a subject. Unless you're doing email, this isn't going to matter, but it gives you, some reference. The actual body itself, so this is just plain text. The reason for this is that various systems use various formatting. At some point in time, we'll probably put in Markdown and HTML editing. We do have HTML editing for tasks, which we won't get into in this video, but for this, because, for instance, Slack uses Markdown, and email HTML editing is kind of a strange beast, and it probably requires its own editor that you copy and paste in here. That we just went with a standard ASCII text block. So basically, if you look at this template, I have some Markdown formatting. So you have the asterisk puts in bold, and the underscore around an object puts something in italics. You'll notice that if you hashtag something, you're going to get a drop-down list, and these are all of the fields that could come from events that are assigned to your team. So if you wanted to reference, so for instance, person's name, this is an internal Zeleo field, so you can put in first name, last name, etc. Then if you type in QuickBooks, you get all the QuickBooks options, and there are many. They're quite generous with the events that they expose from the QuickBooks API. So there are lots of different fields. And this will replace if that field is available to the event that triggered this. So for instance, if I wanted to write a rule that updated my Slack channel anytime a invoice was created, then I'm going to scroll down here and find invoice. See, we have invoice underneath. And you can reference any of these fields so long as they exist. Another thing that I should point out is the way that Zeleo works with lists of items. So for instance, if the invoice has several lines, it actually splits them up into individual events. So if you have multiple lines in an invoice, you're going to get multiple events, each for each line. That's just an easier way to handle this rather than having some sort of way of handling lists of data in the rule builder. It's much simpler to just do a flat event and just iterate for each one. So essentially, so you can put in these things. So if you want to, tax percent, transaction type, quantity. So let's say we have quantity. You're going to put this in, and the event that triggers and creates the post. In this particular case, we're probably going to show you how to do this in a Slack channel. It's going to replace with the actual value. So if I were to go into, whoops, not Spotify. Actually, I believe in this recording I can't show another window, but if you were to go into my Slack channel, you'll see that I actually do have this showing, and I'll show a screenshot in the documentation that will be linked to this video. So the next thing I want to do is show you how to actually configure some logic. So if you go to the side panel again and choose rules and conditions, you can hit this plus button to create a new rule or edit one that you already have if you have some already. We're going to hit the plus and create a new one. And let's say we name it invoice update. Yeah, let's go with the name of it, QuickBooks, so in case you have other accounting software. QuickBooks invoice update. You can put a description in here if you want to, or leave it blank. Okay, so I just wrote, in case you can't read it from your video, this sends a Slack post when invoices are updated. So now, the first thing you start with is a condition. So the condition is when something happens. So the first thing I'm going to do is go down here, and you'll see all of the applications that I've added to my team at the base level here. So you'll see QuickBooks right here. I'm going to select QuickBooks. The event I'm going to select, because I'm going to go with an invoice, is invoice right here. So I'm going to scroll down and select invoice. Now the first thing I do, and you're always going to do this, is you have to define who you're talking about. And remember when we pasted in our company ID to our personal account? So what that does is identify who's listening to this event. And what I'm going to do here is choose the customer ID, or company ID, sorry, from this list, and just put it to person. And so what that means is that when an event comes in, anyone that matches, any person in Zeleo that matches that ID is going to be the focus of the event. So if you're not using a team of people, just put this all the time and ignore it. And then if it's something that you want to use, the social graph, a web of people, I'll show you that in a second. If this is confusing you, you're probably not going to use it, so just put this in every time and ignore it. We'll make a UI update to actually automatically do this at some point, but right now it is what it is. So the other thing I want to do is go to Operation and select Update, right? So we just want to react when an invoice is updated, not created or deleted or voided. Now you can obviously change this depending on what you want to do. You also can add in any other conditions. So these fields are the ones coming from the event. Some of them are just strings that make more sense in a template. Some of them are something that makes sense in a rule. So for instance, if you wanted total amount and you only wanted to react to it if it's greater than, you know, $1,000, something along those lines, you can do that. And in fact, let's leave that in there. Now, once we have this, and assuming when an event fires this is true, you go to the other tab up here, Consequences, and you define what you want to do when that happens. So in the example, I'm going to pick Slack. Now Slack is something I've already added, so that's another integration that I've added to my team. And I'll show you just at the end of this how you would set that up as well. There's a little bit of setup involved, not much though. So I'm going to just pick channel notification. That's the only event that's available to Slack. That's what it does. And here's where the person gets used. So if you wanted to, for instance, when an invoice comes in, send a direct Slack message to all of the people that are direct reports of the individual who is the focus of the event, you could do something like that. That can get a little confusing, but it's also very powerful. So we have that ability. We're working on a UI change to kind of hide this a little bit, but for now, you're probably just going to go person if you want it to be notified when you get an update, or if you want to just send a message to a public channel. But if you wanted to, for instance, send an email to all of your customer support representatives when an invoice goes unpaid, something along those lines, you can do that with Zeleo. So anyway, so person, I'm just going to select person for this. And there are two options you can do with Slack. You can either send a direct message. This is just a Boolean value. So if you set to true, then it's going to send a direct message to the person. Now you're going to have to actually set up what the Slack username is, which I'll show you in a bit for that to work. But I am going to assume you're going to want to actually put that into a channel. So I'm going to say I'm going to select Slack channel. I'm going to say someone's created a channel called QuickBooks. And then I'm going to set the template to the template we created in the first step. So QuickBooks post. And that's it. So when this happens, the event occurs, and assuming that all of the conditions are true, you're going to see a post show up in Slack with the template replaced any values that are there. Okay. So that's the example of QuickBooks. Very quickly, since we use Slack, I wanted to show you how you set that up as well. So you'll see if I go back to my Manage Team, you'll see Slack is already added. If you hit the gear here, you can set your team name. So this is important. We need to know what the name of your team is. Default channel is optional. I usually just put it in the rule. And then authorize Slack channel. That's similar to how we just did the QuickBooks. So you need to actually give us permission to access your Slack channel. And the way Slack does it is it's not by team, it actually is by channel. So every channel you're going to use, including the private ones, you need to actually click this button and select, I'm not signed into my Slack, and select the channel that's appropriate. So let's go through more of this than I was expecting to. Sure. All right. Well, I can show you. This is what the template looks like when it's done. You'll see that there's a bunch of banter in here because it's my development team, but you'll see that that template actually works, and this is with test data on QuickBooks. But now that we're logged in, let's do this again. All right, see, now it is, when I click that button, it's going to ask for permission, and you have to select the channel you want to give permission to. So you'll see that I already did that with this channel that I showed you. I'm going to do that again. Actually, let's just go with general for the hell of it. So I'm going to pick general, and when I allow this, that's going to then allow anytime I reference it in the rule, it's going to allow it to post. So I click allow. And what that's doing behind the scenes is it's asking Slack for permission. It then sends us back a key that we can use and authenticates us for any kind of post we make to that channel. That's it. Once that's set, you can then post to that channel as long as the team name is correct. So again, make sure that you put the team name into your settings. We will be able to post to that channel. So that's it, actually. I will say that because I touched on it briefly, if you did want to reference people by how they relate, again, that's done in the Manage Team dialog as well. So you can invite team members in, and then on the Relationships tab, define how people relate to one another. So you'll see that we have a few examples already. And then when you're in the rule builder, instead of with person, you can say person's blah, the relationship. And then you can reference people by that. And if more than one person has that relationship, more than one person will have this action triggered upon them. So anyway, that's a brief overview of that. And that's enough to get started. So please sign up for a free account on Zeleo. Enable us on QuickBooks, enable us on Slack, start using this. Let us know what you think, and let us know if you need any help getting set up. We are happy to help. We right now would love as many users as possible in the system to get some feedback and some usage of the system. So please sign up and use us to automate your workflow. Thank you very much. Again, the URL is www.zeleo.io, and you can reach us at info@zeleoinc.com. Thank you very much.